Welcome. I'm going to get started because I'm one that likes to get things going on time. I am Meg Clough. We are so pleased that you can make it tonight. This is, as we know, this is the last day of spring and one of the longest days of the year. So it's a great night for a webinar. I'm a member of the Third Act Massachusetts Steering Committee. We're a small group that formed at the beginning of the year and launched ourselves into the world in March. So tonight is a special night for us because it's our very first webinar, as you can tell by the way that we did the misfunction. Thank you, though, for your patience and for being here with us. I'm going to just give you a few reminders and intros, and then we'll launch right into the 45-minute webinar. Our speaker and tonight's tour guide is Fred Hewitt. He will walk us through the collaborative platform he developed for helping citizens like us get our letters to the editors in Massachusetts papers published. As a side note, I have to say I have used this platform a couple of times, and even for someone who is not a tech whiz, I can attest it is simple to use. After retiring in 2014 from a career in software development, Fred did not sit still for long before transforming himself into a climate activist extraordinaire. He worked initially with 350 Massachusetts to establish this letter writing team, which has posted over 2,700 letters, all through the platform we're showcasing tonight. Fred's also a regular contributor to WBUR's Cognoscente, writing all about issues, climate and environmental related. He volunteers his time and expertise at the Charles River Watershed Association and the Charles River Conservancy, and works with students at the Cambridge Ringen Latin School. Today's Wizard of Oz behind the scenes curtain hosting our webinar is Patricia Weinman, a fellow third actor and volunteer. Thank you, Trish, for pulling all the right levers for us tonight. So this is a webinar style. We're all panelists. There will be a Q&A at the end, and we'll let you know when the chat's available to you. It will be recorded, and we've promised to send out the recording within the next couple of days, so you can send it, you can share it with friends and family. I will now hand over to Fred. Thank you, Fred.
Thank you, Meg, for that introduction, and thanks everyone for joining the webinar tonight. As Meg mentioned, the Third Act Mass Letters to the Editor team is modeled after a similar project that I've been leading for a while at 350 Massachusetts, another climate group you might have heard of. So that project started up around 2015 and it's been quite successful. So I thought, why not take advantage of everything we learned at 350 Mass, carry that over to this organization. So this team is inheriting a lot of experience and best practices, and that should enable us to get a pretty fast start. So I'm going to share my screen. I have just a few slides to give you an idea of what we'll be doing. Okay. The first thing I want to emphasize is that LTEs reach a lot of people. Take the Boston Globe, for example. It has almost 250,000 digital subscribers and almost that many print subscribers. So if your letter is published in the Globe or one of the many other smaller papers that we send letters to, a lot of people are going to see it. You'll reach a lot more people than you could by almost any other means without cost. Also, and this is important, letters are read closely by elected officials and their staffs at all levels of government. So this is our superpower. It's a very effective means to get our points of view into the media. As a team member, you'll be getting regular emails with a digest of all the articles we're tracking in our local papers. So it's really an efficient way for you to keep up and current with developments in our areas of interest. And when you send your letter to the newspaper, you sent them a message saying that readers care about climate change, energy policy, environmental justice, Editors pay attention to what readers respond to, and lots of letters mean lots of coverage for the topics that we care about. So every letter counts. Every letter is a political act, I often say. Letter writers are activists, whether or not their letters make it into print. So what do letters to the editor team members actually do? Well, they're tuned into what's going on with climate issues from the local level all the way up to the international level. We respond to whatever articles appear on a given day. After a while, you'll find yourself becoming much more conversant about climate-related news. So we'll be writing lots of letters expressing what's important to us. And I want to stress that everybody can write LTEs. You don't need to be an expert. You only need a little clear thinking and a sincere point of view. Now, here are some of the papers that we've been working with in the past. If you don't see a paper that's in your town, don't worry. We can easily add it. And most papers will publish letters from readers all over the state. If you live in the Berkshires, for example, you can still have your letter published in the New Bedford Light. Now, I've been mentioning this platform, this Third Act Mass LTE platform. So before I go any further, I want to explain that term a bit more fully. It's really just a multi-purpose website and some other software that we've tuned over the past several years. We take advantage of the tools that Google provides for free, like Google Docs and Google Groups. But for the most part, the platform software is behind the scenes. You don't really have to think about it. Just look at it as another website or application. Now, I do want to point out that there is a big difference between what this platform does and what Third Act National does with their LTE platform. The national platform is campaign-oriented, tailored to particular and narrow policy questions. And that platform submits LTEs without reference to articles that appear in the targeted papers. So we're taking a different approach. We only respond to recently published articles, which makes our LTEs much more likely to be published and gives us a much broader range of issues to write about. Editors regard the letters as kind of a conversation between the paper and the readers. And they like readers to respond to what appears in print. That tells them, that there's a dialogue going on with the readership. So the two approaches are inherently different. That is, I'm talking about national versus what we're going to be doing Third Act Mass. They have different intended purposes, and they're entirely complementary. National is working to move opinion on a particular issue or a small number of issues, whereas we are working to raise the visibility and salience of climate change activism more broadly. So I hope you'll participate in both these efforts because they are complementary. Team members get an email almost every day with links to articles we're writing about, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. If you read an article you want to write a letter about, just give it some thought, start writing. We use Google Docs for drafts of letters so that we can easily share our drafts with other team members. And I'll talk a little more about that. Once you have your draft and you're ready to go, you just copy paste from the Google Doc into an email and send it to the newspaper using your own existing email account. It's all quite simple. If you figured out how to join this webinar, you should have no problem using the tools of the LTE team. It's not a high bar. All team members belong to a particular Google group created for that purpose. Many of you probably are already members of one or more Google groups, which are really just special lists of email addresses. We use the group essentially as a mailing list so that you can get the daily alerts. We also use the group to share drafts collaboratively via Google Docs. A team member who wants to get feedback on a draft shares it using the email address of the Google group. kind of clever, actually. You will need what's called a Google identity. It's just an account at Google tied to your email address. There's a good chance you already have a Google identity. If you have a Gmail account, you do, but it's not a problem if you don't because they're very easy to get. And I do want to emphasize that any email address can be used. You do not have to use an @gmail.com address. If you don't yet have a Google identity, we'll put the URL you see on your screen there, accounts.google.com, into the chat. It'll only take a minute to do, and we can help you out if you run into problems or have questions about it. Now, to give you a better feel of what we're talking about, let's take a look at what's in that daily or nearly daily email. You're looking at an excerpt from a morning alert that went out recently. The text you see is from the body of the email message. So you see there are headings, and under which are the rows, one row for each of the articles that we're following that day. And in the leftmost column, you see the name of the paper, pretty obvious. The next column is just the link to the article. And you click that to open it up. Very easy. And now suppose you don't have a subscription to the Globe, or you keep hitting paywalls or subscriber-only content screens when you click these links. This next column, the text button, will open a page on the LTE platform with just the text of the article so that you can read it. It works really well for most of the papers we follow. So you do not need to subscribe to the papers we follow to read the targeted articles. The next column is the draft button, and I'll talk more about that on the next slide. And then you have the Twitter and Facebook buttons. What are those for? Well, maybe you don't have time to write a letter today, but you still think the article's important, and you might want to share it on your social media. So that's what these buttons will do for you. All right, now let's talk about this draft button. You click draft to create a draft of your letter. It opens up the page you see here. The first time you land here, it prompts you for your name. Now you'll notice there's a button here that says Get Suggestions. And let's see what that does. When you click on Get Suggestions button, behind the scenes, the platform sends the article off to a separate server that uses artificial intelligence to come up with some ideas about what to put in your letter. Now, using the AI is completely optional. It's not required. But sometimes you need a little text to prime the pump and get you going. This feature is intended to be like a little personalized brainstorming session for you. You probably won't want to use the text the AI produces verbatim in your letter. You'll rephrase it or rewrite it, or you might just ignore it completely. But it's occasionally very useful for getting you started. I should add that this is a relatively new feature of the platform. And we really don't know what the AI will say about a given article. Well, that's just part of the fun. It will be a unique response each time. That is, what it generates for you will be different from what it generates for the next person. Now, you see this Create Document button. We'll look at that next. When you click that button, it will put you in a Google Doc created just for you. And it adds this header information. As you can see, there's the article link, paper, the date, the author, etc. We have software that can read this information, and we use it for record keeping, tracking purposes. You notice, by the way, the header tells you where you're going to submit your letter. Sometimes instead of an email address, it's a URL for a web page where you fill in a form. Either way, at this stage, you just start writing your letter below the salutation. You compose your letter in the Google Doc. And don't worry, if you've never used a Google Doc, it's not that much different than just typing an email. Now, once you have a draft, you can, if you want, share the draft with other team members before sending it along to the paper. This is highly recommended. I like to call it the secret sauce that made the 350 team so successful. It helps you get a better letter written, and it helps your fellow team members by sharing your ideas with them. And Google Docs makes it very easy to do this. There's a big button on the upper right that says share. You just click that, and the other team members will be notified by email that you're looking for some comments and suggestions on your letter. And this has proven to be really effective, and it makes the whole process more interactive and more interesting. And of course, the final step, when you're ready, is to send it off with the email address or web page that we provide using your own email account. If you shared your letter with the team, we'll track it. Our search tools usually catch all the letters that are published online. And I think you'll have an excellent chance of seeing your letter published based on past experience. 350 Mass team in 2023 is running around 36%, which is actually pretty awesome. So what I'd like for you to do now is let us know that you're willing to give it a try. There's no commitment. We just need your say-so and your email address, and we'll add you to the Google group. We're going to open up the chat. So just click on the chat button, enter your name and your email. If you can't find the chat button for some reason, there'll be other opportunities to join the team in a follow-up email. We're going to be rolling this project out in mid-July. In the interim, there'll be more information, little details that you need to actually use the tools, more demos, more videos to explain how it works. And I think you're going to really enjoy it. So thanks very much for listening to my little spiel. And I'm going to turn it back over to Meg, the real Meg, that is. And then I'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Fred. I'm hearing feedback. Is it okay? If the Q&A could be opened as well, or if you feel more comfortable putting your question in the chat, Fred's happy to answer any questions that came up. There's a couple questions about the question that I've heard asked a lot, Fred, is do the editors know about this platform? Has it ever come to their attention? And if not, what would they think of it?
Excellent question. Our intent is that this is an under the radar operation. Now, because of the nature of it, where we're responding to a whole range of articles with a large number of people, well, not a large number of people, but a significant number. It's hard for editors to know, 6 people wrote about this article. Maybe it's an orchestrated effort. Our intent, what we did at 350 was we never said, and I'm writing as a member of the 350 Mass, or even less likely, the 350 Mass letter to the editor team. We never did that. We don't put our affiliation on our letters, because the editors might say, okay, enough from this group. I'm gonna throttle down what I publish from them. We want to have letters coming from broad geographical distribution, and we want them to have different points of view. They might be similar in their overall outlook, but what I found is people write different kinds of letters. Now, you take the national campaign and what they're doing, they're like blasting largely the same text to the editor. It's not going to take an editor a long time to say, oh, I see there's some national group that's has given this boilerplate text, and they're piling in the letters. I think we have proven to be immune from that kind of screening. So we will continue with the Third Act Mass effort to, each person is an individual agent who happens to have been informed about some articles in the local paper, and they have formed their own opinion. They have written their own letter, and they have sent the letter in on their email address. So there's no reason for us to appear as an orchestrated effort, because frankly, we're not. We're just more of a coordinated effort. I get it's kind of a subtlety in the meaning, but because every person is coming up with their own point of view and writing their own letter, I think it's the right approach.
Great. Fred, may I ask you, you are now the host and I have no capability to control anything.
Okay.
Could you
Can I
open
make
it?
you a-
Well, can you open the chat to everyone and open the Q&A to everyone, or let me answer let me tell you what's in the Q&A? I know it's impossible for you to be doing everything.
Yeah, I'm gonna, once you do that, there's quite a few questions here that we can
Yeah.
roll through.
Okay.
Yeah, there.
Okay. Attendees can submit questions, anonymous questions, and
They should be able to, if you could open it up to the chat for everyone.
okay. Do that too.
Great.
Open the chat window.
One of the questions I can answer is, can we suggest newspapers to add to your list? And yes, Fred is open to that. If you have newspapers that in your local towns, we would love to add them. I know in the past, Fred, there were a couple instances where you weren't able to do it.
Okay, so there's a domain called Wicked Local, which doesn't really print a lot of letters anyway, but there's like Arlington Wicked Local, Belmont Wicked Local, you name it, FraminghamWickedLocal.com. That paper never really proved very successful for us. So if it's a real newspaper that has a real editor and they read and respond to letters and publish letters, then we can add it. But some of these so-called local papers like Patch and Wicked Local that are really just, a guy in an office somewhere in the middle of the state with a single inbox, those don't really work so well for us. And they don't print a lot of climate stuff anyway.
There is a question about if we could provide some successful samples of letters to the editor that have been published through the platform, and I think that would be a big yes. We could do that.
I have about 500, or actually I have about 800 that we can share with you.
Yeah, that's definitely a great idea, and we can send it out with the recording. Another question is, will our subjects overlap with 350 Mass?
Sure, why not? In fact, on many days, I'm sure the 350 folks will be receiving a very similar list of articles. The more, the merrier. Now, some people ask me, well, why don't you just merge the two teams? Frankly, once we start collaborating and say, on a given day, there are 3 people on the 350 Mass team who write a letter and they send it to their group. Okay, that's 3 extra emails in their inbox. Now, if we merge the teams, then we get twice as many letter writers. So I think it might generate too much traffic, too much collaborative traffic for a single team, if you understand my point. So I would like to keep it separate. It gives us a little more flexibility. And, if you want to think of it as competing with the 350 team, who's going to get more letters in or write more letters? I don't think it's anything to worry about. There's plenty of room. There's plenty of good ideas. There's plenty of newspapers out there. 350 Mass team is very Greater Boston oriented. They haven't been successful in the western part of the state or Cape Cod. So there's plenty of room for lots more teams and letter writers.
Thank you. Lois is asking, are we only responding to letters about climate issues in Massachusetts?
Articles. We respond to articles about climate change, energy policy, environmental justice.
Mhm.
Now, I know Third Act has taken under its aegis the democracy and voting issues. So that would take a little bit of retooling to, you've put an idea in my head now. So if we might be able to expand our daily blast. So we included links from our to articles that were more related to the social justice, voting rights, democracy issues as well. Can't promise that, but it's definitely something to think about.
There's a couple questions about, and I had this question myself, about how much traffic you're going to see in your email from this. And I can attest, it's one email a day. It's a morning email that comes
Yeah.
out. And if you don't choose to participate that day, that's pretty much the end of it. Is that right, Fred?
Well, not quite, Meg. When people collaborate, so I create my letter. I say, I'd like to get some feedback. I'd like to get some comments because there's some other people in the group who know a lot more about offshore wind than I do. So then what I do is I share that letter through Google Docs. Google Docs has a collaboration feature. And when I do that, I give the address of the Google group. So everyone in the Google group gets an email from me saying, I'm looking for feedback on this letter. Now, if you want, you can go to there's another whole way to approach this, and you can get no email if you like. You just go to the Google group, and this is sort of advanced, but you say, don't send me any email. And then each morning, you can visit your group page. Remember all the communication within the group is not only going through email, it's also recorded on Google's group page for our group. So you can get your links from the Google group page and don't get any email from the group whatsoever. So it's very flexible. You can also set your settings in Google Groups to receive just no more than one a day or a small number a day. They have different knobs for controlling how much email you get. Most people haven't found it, onerous to get it. Every email that is sent for the group will have a prefix in the subject line, so you know what it is. You can set up a filter if it starts to bother you, but it hasn't been a problem.
Yeah, I enjoy getting it because it curates all the climate change articles, and it's really it's nice actually to see it, even if you can't participate that day. This is a question: do we send our letter to only one paper, or could we send copies to any papers that included the article?
Excellent question. Generally, papers don't like to get letters that have been sent to a whole bunch of papers. You can do it, but we generally have a policy of not doing that. Now, if the exact same Wire article appears in two different papers that aren't connected to one another, it's probably okay. You might want to change the wording or add some kind of local angle if you can, or just gravitate to the paper nearer to your residence. It hasn't really been a problem, people wanting to do that, but it's not something that we encourage. Now, the Boston Globe, I think, says we specifically will be upset if we see your letter in another paper. So it depends on the paper.
And I see that you do research each paper so you know what their guidelines are. And
right.
yeah, so that's all done for you. And every one of them has a little bit of a different guidelines.
Different word maximums. Generally, the word max is like 200. Some say 500. New York Times says 150 would be good. So a letter to the editor is an exercise in being concise, generally.
Clear thinking, yeah. So one other question is, I'm interested, but I would like more training. How do you think you could respond to that, Fred?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question exactly.
I'm interested, but I would definitely need more training.
Oh yeah, we're going to do a lot more training. The training will be, of course, we already have lots of written documentation from 350 Mass, and we just have to bring that over and change a few addresses and things like that. And so there's going to be, between now and the rollout in mid-July, you're going to see documents, you're going to see samples. I hope to have some videos, really short 5-minute videos that take you through the process in 3 short steps or something like that. So absolutely, I did not expect anyone to be able to, participate based on what I told you tonight. There's some, details that you need to know, but don't worry, we will guide you through the learning curve, and it's really not that very difficult.
So Fred, would you also just mind sharing with us what some of the stats are that you've been able to get around percentage of letters published on the platform versus, some of the bigger papers? Like how this is.
Right. Yeah, so we've started in 2015. A good year is, and a really incredible, exceptional year is like 40% published out of 300 submitted. A very good year is 2023, where we are running in the mid 30s, 35, 36%. Now, anecdotally, I know the major papers like the Washington Post and the New York Times, who get many letters, are only able to publish 1 or 2%. Boston Globe, I expect they get hundreds of letters per day, and they probably publish, I'll make a seat of the pants guess, somewhere between 5 and 10%. Our team stat with the Globe is closer to 25%.
It's pretty good. I'm wondering about the AI. How many of the writers that use the platform actually use the AI feature?
Yeah, it's a new feature, and we are continually trying to improve it to get it to produce better output. I did a poll of the group, and I said, did you know about it? Have you tried it? Was it useful? And I got like a mix. A lot of people weren't even aware that we had added this feature. And other people said, yeah, I tried it, it's great. And other people said, I tried it, it didn't help me very much. So that was a month or 2 ago. And I think now it's starting, tweaking the prompts and so forth. It's starting to get a little more useful. Sometimes it goes off in the wrong direction. It just gives you something that you don't want to say. But it's not intended to actually write the letter for you. It's intended, as I said in the slide presentation, to be like a little brainstorming, priming the pump, giving you a little text to get you started.
I'm going to try it actually. I think it would be useful for me because sometimes I get a block, and I think it would just give ideas. This is a good question. We've talked about this, Fred. It says if we're lucky enough to have a letter published by paper, shouldn't we then refocus efforts on another paper and not have a bunch of letters? I think this is what the person is saying. And you have an interesting answer for this. Yes, you do.
Oh, I know what you're talking. You're talking about Hanscom?
Well, I think it's about, that once editors see a rush of letters, it becomes an issue. I mean, no.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So having a lot of letters to a paper is a signal to the editor that it's an important topic. So I think that's what you were driving at, Meg.
Yeah.
In the Sunday Globe, the team wrote a bunch of letters about the hangar expansion at Hanscom, which was a kind of a hot issue. There'd been a big article the previous Sunday, and the Globe published 4 letters on the article in the Sunday paper. All 4 of the letters were from the team. Now, I think the questioner was asking, should we try to spread the message around to different papers? We're very opportunistic about that. If there's an article in a paper that we want to respond to, absolutely. We will. There's never a shortage of articles to write about. There's articles almost every day, and we just go for the good targets. If a paper publishes something, we'll hit it. And here's the other factor that controls that. Say you do get a letter in the Globe. The editor doesn't want to see your name again for like 6 weeks or 2 months. So you focus your attention on a different paper.
Yeah, those are awesome tips. I don't think there's any other question. Well, there might be one. Looks like someone's sending a question through now. Maybe not, but I don't know if there's any questions on the Google identity that may hang up some people, but I think Fred has explained how simple that is to do, even if you don't have a Gmail account. We're happy to help with any of those things if you feel like you need it. And okay, yeah, that was a mistake, someone. So yeah, I think that's the end of the questions. And I think, yeah, the Q&A have been fully answered. And so I'm sure there are other questions that will arise as you think about this and consider joining. We thank you for sharing your emails. We're actually going to send the recording. We'll send some sample letters, and we'll send the link to Google, the Google account again as well. If there's anything else you can think of that would be helpful, please email Third Act, the email you got today with the host link that you're on, and we're happy to provide anything that you need.
And there will be training coming out. So rest assured that between now and mid-July, you will feel really comfortable with the way the team works, and you'll fall right into it. And we would like to do it sooner. There's a bunch of vacations involved here, so just hang tight till mid-July. We're going to really roll this out the right way.
And in terms of a question on the email, Third Act MA at gmail.com is where Fred and I will receive any follow-up questions. And we will also make sure that email goes out in the follow-up email, because you don't, Third Act MA at gmail.com.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I may have missed this, but who is reading the papers? It's so hard in the suburbs to get a paper and to find the time to read it. So I'm just wondering if there are papers that are dedicated towards more scientific talk that we could be recommended to read, and who's reading the letters to the editor is my question.
Okay.
I don't need an answer now. I'm just.
So letters to the editor are on the online version. People do.
Yeah, they're online.
Okay.
So I think there may have been a question, how do we find the articles that we send out every day? And that we have, that's part of the platform that you don't see. There are tools that built into our servers, our system, that utilize internet search to locate the articles that look interesting. And as I said, we refine these search tools over a period of time, so they work pretty well. We can gather all the climate-related stuff pretty effectively, send it out. And I think letters are one of the most read. Like, you know, everyone reads the headlines, people read the latest news or the, I don't know what, but I think the letters are generally speaking one of the parts of the paper that people read, both in print and online.
It's also, it is agreed. I mean, not as many people are reading newspapers and, but the people who are reading newspapers are generationally in the third act area of focus. So, it's still active and it still influences editors.
And politicians and decision makers who see the letters and realize that people are concerned about the issue.
Good question. Thank you very much. I asked the same question previously, so. All right, I think that's a night. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. It's still light out. I think we'll have 30 minutes or so to go out and enjoy this beautiful, beautiful last days of spring. And you will be hearing from us. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.